Hello everybody and welcome back to Red Eagle Politics. Make sure you guys like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. So 3 days away until Election Day, and Donald Trump is leading the polls in enough states to win 270 electoral votes. As it stands today, he also leads the national popular vote. And there was a poll that was released today that we have to analyze because it was just ridiculous. You have a gold standard in Iowa, or at least you did have a gold standard in Iowa, called the Des Moines Register, the Seltzer poll. Everybody knows about it. And when polls in the Rust Belt in 2016 were showing that Hillary Clinton was going to easily win Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio and Iowa were really close. They came out with a Trump +7 in Iowa. He actually outperformed that poll by 2 percentage points. And then there was a poll that they released in 2020, and Donald Trump was leading it by 7 again. He outran that poll by about a point. So you kind of see a common pattern of the poll being very accurate. They've always been very accurate. 2012, they've had a few misses here and there. 2018, they were a little bit off, but they were perfect in 2022. And currently they released their poll. What does it show? Are we going to see something? Because I'd be a little concerned if they were going to put out like a Trump +5 or a Trump +6 as their final poll, because usually you want your final poll to age well. Their second to last poll was Trump +4, and usually their second to last polls are vastly, I guess you would say, more favorable to Democrats. Like it was tied in 2020, and obviously Trump ended up winning the state by 8. So if you want to play that game, he'd be up by like 12 in the state of Iowa. But they released their poll, and I think credibility just went out the window. And we're going to get to why, but they have Kamala Harris winning Iowa, winning the state of Iowa. And I've gotten a lot of people there like, what does this mean? Does this mean it's over? No, it means it's over for Seltzer because this poll's not going to age well. It's nonsense, and I'm going to show you why it's nonsense. But more importantly, yeah, Kamala Harris can win this election. Everybody understands that they need to get off their ass and vote on Tuesday, because I think early voting in many states has ended. But if it hasn't ended in your state, you could obviously bank your vote now. If you requested a mail-in ballot, make sure you end up returning that. There's like 100-some thousand in Pennsylvania that haven't. We want to get that return rate up for sure, because those are votes that are banked right then and there. But when you're looking at this, it's like, yeah, this is not going to happen. This is literally not going to happen. And you can analyze the poll in depth because it shows that Kamala Harris is winning the state outright. Not that Donald Trump is underperforming. They show Kamala Harris winning a state that voted for Donald Trump by 9 points when he won and shocked the world. And then 2020, a little bit of a rough year, he won it by 8 percentage points. He only lost 0.8% of ground. They believe Harris is going to outrun 2020 Biden after the past 4 years by 11 points in the state of Iowa. Like, that is just malpractice. And it's a really bad poll when you look into the poll as well, because when you look at some of these other, I guess you would say top lines, because they're not crosstabs at all, but they ask different questions to gauge the electorate. And what do they show in terms of these top issues that they have? Obviously, Trump supporters, inflation, immigration, the economy, you name it. But if you look at Harris's supporters, the economy is the number 4 issue for them. And that's not the case in nearly any single national poll we've seen, even the polls that are good for Kamala Harris. So basically, the number 1 issue in this poll, when you crunch the numbers, is democracy. Number 2 is abortion. The economy is like right there with it. So again, that's not in line with any polls that we're seeing nationally. It's not. It just isn't. The economy is number 1. Immigration is number 2. Abortion is number 3. Democracy is kind of in there at number 4, but Trump is doing a hell of a lot better on that issue than he was 6 months ago. I wonder why. It's not like the Democrats just threw their primary in the trash because they were losing. So you look at this, and it's like they talk about supporters of Trump moving away from him, but in reality, you have to analyze the recall vote, because there is a recall vote to it. And when you look at the recall vote, if we can pull it up, the 2020 vote, Donald Trump is winning 4% of Biden voters in the poll. He's winning 4% of Biden voters. And he's also winning most of his, like 89% of Trump supporters. So 4% of Biden supporters are going to Trump, and 4% of Trump supporters are going to Harris. Like, that's exactly what it's showing. So if you weigh by recall vote, there's no shift, and new voters are like split evenly. Harris has a slight lead, which does not check out with anything we're seeing, whether it's in the early vote data, nationwide, in Iowa itself. It seems like a more liberal sample that they happen to get, but it's just an awful poll, because you have a pollster with a pristine track record that releases a poll that is absolutely a train wreck of a poll. And this is not the only poll that was released today out of the state of Iowa, because there was another poll that has been accurate. They were just as accurate in 2022 as Seltzer. They were more accurate in the Republican caucus this year than Seltzer, and they show Donald Trump winning by 9. What do you think is more likely? That the national polls are off by like 13 points, because that's what it would take for the Seltzer poll to age well, or Trump improves a point in Iowa? I think the answer is pretty obvious. And it was actually, before they pushed the leaners, it was closer to Trump plus 11. When they pushed him, it was Trump plus 9. The leaners were overwhelmingly for Kamala. Maybe some of those people don't, actually end up voting or whatever. You want to split the difference. It could be a Trump plus 10 as it stands. But even if you go with a Trump plus 9 in Emerson, that's still a very, very solid result overall for Donald Trump, especially because, the gold standard, eventually, it's not going to last forever. We understand that, but Emerson has been more accurate recently than Seltzer in Iowa, and maybe that may not age well. Maybe Trump outruns both of those polls significantly. Maybe he does have a bad night, but the Seltzer poll, I will delete my channel if it's within like 6-7 points. There's just no way that it's going to age well. If they released a Trump plus 5 or a Trump plus 6, I'd actually be kind of worried, because I'm like, okay, maybe he is not generating the support from these white working class voters. Maybe it's Dobbs, maybe it's something, because you kind of like are going to put a lot of stock in the poll. It's like, okay, well, maybe there's something off here. But when they just dropped a Harris plus 3, I just started laughing, because there's no justification for it. For Harris to even get Iowa within 3, she's going to have to do significantly better with white working class voters and white college graduates as well. Like, she's going to have to do significantly better. And at that point, she would win the state by 3. She would win nationwide by 13 or 14 points. Michigan would go to her by 13. Wisconsin would go to her by 11. Pennsylvania would too. There's no universe where that's happening. South Carolina would flip. Alaska would flip. Florida would be blue. Texas would be blue. This is not happening. If it does, I just would not know what to say. I think the country would just fail a collective IQ test, but that's besides the point. When you're looking at this, there's no way that those numbers are going to add up. There is no way. You're talking about Donald Trump just bottoming out with every single possible demographic and every single national poll being off by over 10 points. That is not going to happen. It's just not. There's no universe where that is the case. There is not. And people want to say, well, they have a good track record. Well, so does Emerson. Emerson had a recall vote that was Trump plus 8. They had a recall vote that was like Biden plus 5. Someone said Biden plus 3. But either way, 11 to 13 points off in the recall vote, you're doing something wrong. It's not going to be perfect all the time. I get it. Usually you have a recall vote sample. It's not always going to be perfect. If Trump won a state by like 2, for example, and the recall vote ends up being like a tie, then, it could just be an error, or maybe one side's more energized. But a recall vote error of that magnitude does not happen. If you weigh the poll by recall vote, Donald Trump leads the poll by like 8 points, which is kind of in line with what we're seeing. Like, I don't understand. This is the same pollster that released a poll, Trump and Biden, I think, before the debate back in June, and Donald Trump led by 18 points in that poll. Kamala Harris, they polled Trump v. Harris. Donald Trump led by 15 points in that poll. Public opinion does not change on a whim like that. You're doing something wrong. And when you look at this, voter registration over the past 4 years, zooming off a cliff towards the Republicans in Iowa. Early voting has shifted heavily Republican. And it's true, early voting cannot fully predict the election. We don't know who's going to show up on Election Day or where the independents are going. And Emerson just hours ago found a Trump plus 10, and the national popular vote looks like a coin flip, but somehow Donald Trump is losing the state of Iowa. Doesn't really add up. You look at the early voting data by party out of the state of Iowa, Republicans are doing very well. They're running neck and neck with the Democrats, and Republicans are going to likely win the Election Day vote. If you look at the final election here, majority of the state of Iowa is going to be voting on Election Day. They did in 2022. They likely will now. And just the fact that Republicans already are banking this many votes and the enthusiasm is there for Donald Trump, they're front loading. What does that exactly tell you? It should tell you that, if anything, the state would move right. Now, it's not definitive for sure. The early voting data is not definitive, but this poll is garbage. Like, it's laughable. They're just deciding to throw away their reputation. Why? I don't know, but apparently some Democrats yesterday found out about this because J.B. Pritzker mentioned it at a meeting, and this was leaked on social media, and he was like, oh, wait, that's not being released till later today. So what's exactly going on here? What's exactly happening? Because it does seem as if something's wrong here. And you can see that even these people are saying that it was passed around in Democrat circles. I don't know. Did they sponsor this poll somehow under the radar? I don't know. But the fact that people knew about it and were talking about it seems a little suspicious. And a lot of people are saying this might be a suppression poll from the gold standard. And this is, if that is true, which I'm not saying it is, but it's a theory a lot of people are saying. But if that theory does end up being true, yeah, that would be absolutely brutal and a stain on the polling industry. Because Emerson, they're nonpartisan. We understand what they're showing. They're showing a result in line with like 99% of other polls. But when you look at Seltzer, they're just coming out of nowhere, out of left field with like a crackhead poll, because that's exactly what it is. And the Trump campaign issued a response saying, you know, this poll dropped right after the Emerson poll, and you talk about what's going on in terms of early voting, in terms of the registration stats, and how Harris is leading seniors by 19 points when Trump carried them by 9 in 2020. When COVID was a pressing issue, moving seniors a little bit to the left. That's not exactly something that really checks out. And the Emerson poll makes sense. The Des Moines Register poll does not. They claim Trump is leading by just 12 with working class voters, when in 2020 he won them by 17. So that's just absolutely an abysmal result that they get. And it's like the independents in the sample are very liberal, and you can tell, because Trump is actually doing well with Republicans in the poll. He's doing, you know, obviously not well with Democrats, but the fact that the parties are sticking together, but these independents are way too liberal, and then the top issues in the Harris vote are like overwhelmingly like democracy and abortion. It's like, did you poll San Francisco or did you poll Dubuque, Iowa? Because that's the question that we have to find out the answer to. But usually this poll means a lot. This year, I don't believe it means anything because it's a laughingstock. It's not going to age well. Donald Trump could have a horrible night. He's still going to win the state of Iowa by at least 6 points. Like, seriously. Like, what issue would drive Iowans to just the arms of Kamala Harris, of all people, when they've stuck with Trump twice, and when every other gold standard poll, like Marist in Arizona, shows Trump winning Arizona, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution in Georgia, they show Donald Trump winning the state by 4. But then Iowa, yeah, Harris is going to somehow, out of nowhere, win Iowa by 3. Yeah, I think Emerson is the new gold standard. And on top of that, we have new polls that drop from another gold standard, but it's Atlas Intel. And we've covered them before. They released another round of swing state polling. I think this is their final round, and they show Trump up in every single swing state. They also show Kari Lake leading. That's interesting. And I don't think Trump's going to win Arizona by 7. The Republican early vote data looks great there, as is Nevada, but I think those may not age well. But if you look at the Atlas Intel national polling, which has been accurate, they've only been off by like 0.2% in 2020, 0.3% in 2022. They're currently showing Trump up in the popular vote by 2. Iowa is probably going to vote to the right of the country by around, 12 points, maybe a little bit less than that. But, if you get a popular vote that's like even, Iowa's going to be Trump plus 9 point something at a minimum, like what Emerson is showing, and Wisconsin's probably going Republican. And given the fact Trump is well positioned in the Sun Belt, he probably wins. So we'll see what happens, guys. But that poll is it's sad to see the downfall. Because regardless of what the result is, that poll is going to age like absolute garbage. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Like this video down below, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Red Eagle out.